So it's a pleasure to be here. So my name is David Grove, and today we're going to talk about success and fitness and how that relates to the perception of your own self-image, of body confidence, and how that all leads to success in your personal and your professional life. And we're going to talk about how I went from working in the dark, wet woods of Oregon to standing on stage at a bodybuilding competition of all things to taking over as the CEO of this little fitness equipment company called ThinkFit. So before we jump into all that, let me give you just a little bit of background on me. So I was born in the Bay Area here over in Pleasanton and all the way through high school, and I went up to Oregon State and got a degree in forest engineering. Now for those of you that don't know what forest engineering is, it's the equivalent of a civil engineer in the woods. So building bridges and building logging roads and designing logging systems and that kind of thing. So after I graduated with that degree, I took a job with Weyerhaeuser, a big timber company, and I moved up to this tiny little town in Oregon on the coast called Seaside. So in Seaside, it rains 110 inches a year. Okay, so for comparison, here it rains like 30 inches, right? 110 inches a year, that's like 10 feet of rain every year, just about. So as a forest engineer, that's an outside job, all right? So every day I get up and put on head-to-toe rain gear, basically, and go spend 10 or 12 hours a day in the woods, hiking around, doing all the stuff that a forest engineer does. So you can imagine after 2 or 3 years of working in the equivalent of 10 feet of rain and being soaked to the bone all the time and practically growing mold on your skin, yeah, I decided that maybe it's time to do something else. And so I went back to school, I got an MBA at the University of Oregon, and then moved back here in 2005. And when I got back here, I spent some time thinking about what am I really passionate about and how can I channel that into what I'm doing every day. And I've always been a health and wellness guy. I've been in and out of health clubs my entire life, and so I thought, you know, maybe that's a good place for me to play. So I went to work for a company called Leisure Sports. They're in Pleasanton, and they own the Club Sport and Renaissance Club Sport branded health clubs, and they have some hotels too. I did that for a while, and then in 2011, I was presented with the opportunity to take over this small little fitness equipment company called ThinkFit. And in all honesty, I mean, when I first got presented with that opportunity, I kind of took a step back and I thought, CEO and running a company, I've never done anything like that. I can't do that. And I stopped and I thought about it for a while, and I thought about all the things that I had done in my life leading up to that point that had given me confidence. And I thought, I can't do that. And so I took that job, and it's been great, and I've been doing it for 1.5 years now, and I haven't looked back since. So that's a little bit of background on me and where I came from. And as I said, we're going to talk about success and fitness. So let me start by asking a question of, how many of you feel like you're the best you can be? It's kind of a broad question, right? So why not? What's that? So why not, right? Let me ask you another question. How do you feel about the way you look? And that's always an interesting question too, right? And I'm not talking about the way that you think other people think you should look. I'm asking, how do you feel about the way you look? And depending on how you answer that question, do you think there's been times in your life where the way you feel about the way you look has held you back from doing certain things, or has caused you to make decisions that have held you back from being your best? Right? And do you think that a change in the way you feel about the way you look could start to help you break down some of those barriers or get over some of those obstacles that are potentially holding you back from being your best? I know that's absolutely true for me. Let me ask you another question. Has there ever been a time in your life where you felt like $1 million, like you could just take on the world, right? So how about right after you get your hair styled? Or maybe right after you slip on a brand new shiny suit, or right after you get your car detailed? True for some people, not for others. But okay, so picture this: you're in your freshly detailed car, and you got a brand new suit on. Your hair is all slicked back, right? Don't you feel a little bit more confident? Like you can take on the world a little bit, right? And why is that? I'm convinced that there's a very strong connection between the way we feel about the way we look and our level of personal achievement and self-confidence. And once we start to understand that connection, we can start to appreciate some of the decisions that we can make or things that we can do to help drive us towards having a better perception of our own self-image. Right? So, but do you think that by striving to achieve somebody else's standard of what's perfect or what the right self-image is for you, do you think that's going to help you get closer to being your best? I don't think so. I think it's going to take you a lot further away. If you constantly spend your life worrying about what everybody else around you is thinking, it's going to drive you crazy, right? So let me tell you a story. So I met this woman 20 years ago now in high school. And when we first met, she was extremely confident. She just had this self-confidence about her. She didn't care what other people thought. She would on any challenge that you put in front of her. And over the last 20 years, there's been a big, big shift in her personality. And if you ask her why, what she would tell you is that for whatever reason, over the last 20 years, she started to not like what she saw, the image of herself, what she saw when she looked in the mirror. And this is what she'll tell you in her own words. And what she tells me is that because she started to not like that image that she saw, that had a big negative impact on her self-confidence. And because her self-confidence went down, that affected the way that she dealt with people in her life, the way she dealt with opportunities that were presented to her, and she feels like it really held her back from being her best. So if personal achievement is connected to this perception of our own self-image, then why aren't we constantly doing the things that we think are going to help with that perception of our own self-image to help us get closer to being our best? Is it because we don't want to admit that we're flawed? Maybe at least not in our own mind's eye. Or is it because we're just human and life's constantly throwing challenges at us, right? So do you ever feel like from the second that you wake up in the morning, from the time you turn on the TV or you turn on the radio, that it's like a fire hose of people and companies telling you all the things that are wrong with you, right? It's ridiculous. And we're constantly bombarded by images from Hollywood, bikini models and six-pack abs, right, and all that. I don't know about you, but I get sick and tired of everybody else outside of me telling me what I should think is the right self-image and how I should feel about myself. So our body perception is constantly under attack. And the right body perception is defined by you, right? It's not defined by anybody else around you. It doesn't matter what other people think, it matters what you think. And if losing 20 pounds is going to help you have a better self-image and a better body perception, well, then that should be your goal. If being a competitive bodybuilder is going to give you a better perception of your self-image and change the way you feel about the way you look and give you more confidence, then that should be your goal. It doesn't matter what the goal is. What matters is that it's important to you and it's controllable by you. It doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. So when I was a little kid, I was this small, scrawny little kid, and I was shy, and I didn't like being around other people. I didn't like talking to people. It was crazy. And when I was 13, I remember this story. Bear with me for a minute. When I was 13, my parents sent me to this baseball camp. It was up at UC Davis, actually. And it's the kind of camp where your parents drop you off at the beginning of the week, and you stay in the dorms, and then you do your baseball stuff during the day, and you go back and you sleep in the dorms at night. And I remember one day after dinner, I was walking back to my dorm, and I was walking down this hall by myself, of course, because I didn't have any friends and shy. And I'm walking down this hallway, and there was this little room on the right-hand side, and it was like a game room, and they had some arcade games in there and that kind of thing. And I thought, well, maybe I'll duck in and I'll play a couple of video games before I go to bed. And I looked through the window of this door to make sure there wasn't anybody in there. I didn't like being around other people. And I didn't see anybody, so I walked in, and I noticed over to my right there were two college-age girls sitting at a table. They were just, kind of talking or doing whatever they were doing. So now I'm in this room by myself, and I have these two college-age girls that are staring at me, and I'm this 13-year-old kid with no self-confidence, bad self-image. And so, what did I do, you ask? Well, I said, so embarrassing. I go, did you guys see a tall guy with dark hair in here? And they said, no. And I go, great, I'll go look somewhere else. And I turned around, and I practically ran out of the room. It's embarrassing. But I didn't even have enough confidence in myself to be able to just say hi and turn around and play a few video games and leave. I mean, talk about a lack of self-confidence leading to missed opportunities. Right? It was crazy. So when I got to high school, I knew that if I was ever going to be this I really wanted to be, I had to get this self-confidence issue and my perception of my self-image, I had to get it under control. And so it was affecting everything I did, like it was my Achilles heel, right? It was affecting the way I played, so it was affecting my performance in school, my social life. So I had this friend, a guy named Barry. He was a couple years older than me, and I used to watch him on campus, and he just had this aura of self-confidence about him, and not in a bad way. He wasn't arrogant. He was the nicest guy in the world. We loved him. He was just confident. And what I noticed is that Barry was on the high school football team, and he used to spend a lot of time in the gym lifting weights. And I would see him come out of the gym, just looked confident to me. And he was kind of a bigger guy for lifting weights. And I thought, oh, what the heck? Maybe I'll try that. Maybe there's some connection between doing in the gym and this thing. And so I remember like it was yesterday. I went into that weight room with Barry, and I spent maybe an hour in there with him. And I walked out, and I was the same scrawny little kid, right? This self-confidence about me. I felt like I could take on the world. And that was life-changing. It sounds trivial, but it was. So I spent the next 3 years working really, really hard in that weight room. And by the time I was a senior in high school, I was the starting goalkeeper on the varsity soccer team. I was a starting pitcher on the varsity baseball team. And I was a student body vice president. And if you told me 3 years earlier, as a freshman, I was going to be doing those things as a senior, I would have thrown up, first and foremost. And then I would have gone and I would have crawled in a hole, because I would have been too scared and nervous about having to take on those kinds of responsibilities. So then when I got to college, the weight room at Oregon State, it literally became my sanctuary. And I worked really hard in that weight room. And I remember just school, every day when I walked out of that weight room, I felt like I was unstoppable. I just had this confidence about me, like I could take on the world. And I worked really, really hard. And my body perception and my physical persona was changing as a result of what I was doing in the weight room. And people started treating me differently, and I remember I was interacting with people differently. I was treating conversations with people and opportunities that were presented to me as a confident adult, not as this scared, shy little kid. It was an amazing experience for me. I remember it like it was yesterday. So by the time I was a junior in college, I decided, for some crazy reason out of the blue, I'm going to do a bodybuilding show. I mean, I still to this day don't know why I made that decision, but I decided to do it, and I walked out on stage and I got creamed. It was a bloodbath. I placed 15th out of 15 guys. Probably would have been worse if there had been more guys in there. I got creamed at that show, but you should have seen me train for the next one. I was on fire, and I came back 2 years later and I beat every one of those 15 guys on that stage to take the middleweight title. And so for those of you that don't know about bodybuilding, just a quick side note, there's drug-free bodybuilding and there's non-drug-free bodybuilding. So on the drug-free side, which is what I always did, they test every athlete, so no performance-enhancing drugs, testosterone and human growth hormone and all that stuff. Makes for a pretty level playing field, right? On the other side of the coin, non-drug tested side, it's sort of free-for-all. They don't anybody for anything. All kinds of testosterone and HGH kinds of things. So I had just come off winning this show, this drug-tested show, and I thought, that was a big goal for me, and it took a lot to achieve that goal. But I wonder what it would be like to compete against guys that were on drugs and have this extra added advantage. So I set another goal for myself, and in 2010, I walked out on stage and I beat another 15 guys to take the title at that show, and that was a non-drug tested show. And I know a lot of those guys on stage were on drugs. So I want to make something clear, and that's that what I do, bodybuilding and weightlifting for me, it's about me. It doesn't have anything to do with anybody else around me. It's about the confidence and the body perception that gives me. That internally I have the strength to drag myself out of bed at 5 o'clock in the morning when it's still dark, and in the wintertime it's raining half the time and it's cold. Everybody else is still sleeping, and my body's telling me, just go back to sleep, we'll do it tomorrow, what's the big deal if you just don't do it today? But having the internal strength to be able to drag yourself out of bed, because you know that that's what you need to do to drive you towards being your best, that's what bodybuilding and weightlifting is for me. So why am I telling you all this? When I set a goal for the Contra Costa, which was that non-drug tested show, when I set that goal, and the confidence that I needed to set that goal, and the confidence that I needed to follow through and achieve that goal, that was life-changing. And that's the power of body confidence. When you like the way you look, and you like the way you feel, I think you're unstoppable. And it's amazing the feeling that you get from that. So we talked about setting a goal and what it feels like to achieve a goal, but what about the process of getting there, right? I mean, so many times it's just as much about the process as it is about the goal. Right? So let me ask a couple other questions. So how many of you ate fast food in the last week? I have. Come on, I know somebody. Was it good? Right? Milkshakes at McDonald's are really good. But is it good for you? Is the question, right? How many people exercised 3 out of the last 7 days? It's better, right? about more than 3 out of the last 7 days. So we know that exercise has been categorically proven to reduce disease and increase life. So then regardless of how you answer those questions, in the times in your life where you've done the things that you shouldn't have, where you didn't do the things that you knew you probably should have, why didn't you? And were those decisions leading you towards getting closer to being your best, or taking you further from it? Or do you even care about being your best? Right? The answers to those questions, they really get to the heart of our own internal power struggles. Right? The great thing about that is that you only have yourself to fight against when it comes to body perception and self-confidence. And that may seem like a big struggle, but put that in comparison to struggling against some outside antagonist. I don't know, getting cancer, getting hit by a bus, being born into poverty, right? Those are all things that you have no control over. The great thing about body perception and the self-image that you get as a result of that is that it's 100% in your control. That's a really important point, so I'm going to say it again. Body image is 100% in your perception, and the self-image that you get as a result of that is that it's 100% in your control. That's a really important point, so I'm going to say it again. Body image is 100% in your body confidence. So now, I know that a lot of people, including me, would like to say, well, we've got legitimate excuses. I've got a long commute to work. I drive to Redwood City every day, it's an hour. We've got long commutes, we've got family obligations, and we've got big projects at work. And those are all legitimate excuses, right? But if you're ready to put the oxygen mask on yourself or doling it out to all of the other constituencies in your life, here's something that maybe, because I know it's absolutely helped me. I use a version of a compass, if you will, to help guide me in a lot of the decisions that I make. There's a compass on the handout that you guys have. We all know what a compass is, right? It helps point us in the right direction and helps keep us on that path. It helps make sure that we know we're on the right path. And I use this compass to help guide me in a lot of the decisions that go around. You know, should I stop and swing into McDonald's and grab that milkshake? Or maybe I don't have time to go to the gym today. The point's not a little deceiving though, right? Because the question of, should I go to the gym today or not, or I'm going to swing into McDonald's, it's pretty easy to figure out at what point on that compass the needle's land, right? It's going to get you closer to your goals or push you further from them. But it's all of the little points around the edges to the east and that are represented by those question marks on there that represent the decision we make in life, right? So the challenge is figuring out where the decision that you're going to make, that you're struggling with, is going to land you on that compass. So this compass for me really is one of the most powerful things that I have. It's more powerful than my iPhone or my iPad or my ThinkFit or even my own company's products. Because what that compass does is it unleashes that power that you already have inside of you to make the right decision. Every time I'm faced with a decision that I feel like is going to pull me off that path, if I take a step back, and it sounds trivial, but if you take a step back and you picture this compass in the back of your mind, and you think about, if I make a decision, where's that needle of that compass going to point, and is it going to pull me further off my path? It's amazing you can put yourself into if you spend 30 seconds asking yourself, where's the decision going to land you on that compass? So when I set off on this journey for this Contra Costa bodybuilding show that I told you about, the untested show, I had about 5 months to prepare for that, and I had to lose about 40 pounds before I could step on stage to be able to do well in that show. So I started at 5 months out at about 200 pounds, and over the course of 5 months, I stepped on stage at 159.5 pounds and about 1% of body fat, which is ridiculous. And that 5-month journey was misery for me. I was miserable the whole time. I was starving, and I was irritable. My wife wanted to divorce me, and my kids hated me. It was miserable. But it was a goal that I had set for myself, and I worked really hard. And that entire time I was starving, right, to lose 40 pounds in 5 months. But every time I wanted to sneak a couple extra cookies at the office, nobody's looking, right, or swing into McDonald's because I don't have time to actually eat good, clean food, I thought about that compass, and I thought of where the point was going to land and what that was going to mean 5 months later for that goal that I set for myself. And it's amazing what your mind can do when you picture where that point's going to land. That internal strength that the compass gives me, it's life-changing, and I know that it would do things for all of you guys. So I use this compass, like I said, for all kinds of things. things, and it guides my decisions around fitness and nutrition and exercise and body confidence and self-image. But you can use this compass for anything. That internal power that it unleashes inside of you, it sets the foundation. It's the foundational element for so many other things that you do in life. So what if you guys all had a compass like this in your pocket or in the back of your mind? And what if you knew that for the last 6 months or the last 6 days or the last 6 hours, you'd already made 20 decisions that had kept the needle on that compass pointing due north? So maybe it was the bagel and cream cheese that you skipped this morning, or maybe you had water instead of soda, or maybe you took the stairs instead of later somewhere. What if you knew that every decision that you made for that period of time was pointing you due north and drawing you closer to being Christ? So if that were the kind of question I would ask, where we started, which is, what would you do if your body looked the way you wanted it to look and you were self-confident about the perception of yourself? So I'll leave you with that. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to take them. Do we have any questions?
David, you'll be at the ThinkFit booth, so people have questions, they can visit here as well.
Right, and our audience challenge question for the booth too to think about is, when has success, right on here, when has the power of fitness contributed to your success? So think about that and come enter that question in the booth, and we got some great prizes for you guys to win.
Awesome.
Do that?
Thank you so
All right.
much.
Okay, thanks.